Hello everyone, welcome to Mi's Bookshelf and welcome to my buying ban for 2023. So but first off, I want to state that this is not originally my idea. I'm definitely taking some inspiration from Nikki Pearson. I'll link her channel down below. She made this video, which I'll actually link as well, which is about how she promotes her own reading to buy books. So I'm gonna do the same, a similar inspired idea I definitely got from Nikki. So I have noticed over the last year, I was looking at my stats. I read up to this point 365, something like that, in between 65 and 70 books throughout the year. Now, of those books, I have owned 100 before reading. And this is not necessarily a problem unless you take into account that my shelves are so full. I have books on the outside of my shelves and I have a pile, and it's just something where I don't have enough space for all of the books I have purchased, and they don't really work in conjunction with the books I have read from my own collection. So I'm having some stipulations put into how I can buy books because I know I won't do a book buying ban. I've never done it because I know it won't work. So here's some book restrictions for buying. The first thing is that for every 2 books I have owned prior to reading, I get to buy 1 book. So that means I have to minimize my TBR, my physical owned to be read pile, by 2 books before I can bring a new book into my collection. So this is a book that I have to say I read this one and I read this one. That doesn't count because I have read this one before. It has to be a new book to my reading. So if I read this book and this book, for example, those are 2 books off of my physical TBR, and therefore I'm allowed to purchase 1 book in that situation. However, like I said, if I reread a book, it doesn't count towards that because that is not taking a book off of my physical TBR. Now, there are some requirements or extenuating circumstances I'm gonna go with. The first is a book that I've pre-ordered. It's a book I'm very excited about, and I can pre-order it because I know I love the author, I love the content, I'm going to want to own that book. So I'm gonna purchase that one in advance. The second qualification is trips do not count. So when I went to the JASNA conference in September to October, that weekend, that would not have counted because of how many books I bought, but it just wouldn't count because it's a trip. Trips do not count. If it's like a little trip to the next town over, that's not a trip. I'm gonna be honest with myself. So that does not count. The next thing is that I'm not excluding library books from my reading. I just really want to limit the amount of books I'm bringing into my home from the books I'm taking out of my home. So every single time I read 2 new books that I have owned, great. If I have purchased a book and I am not abiding by that, that will come out of my future tally, but I'm really gonna try to hold myself to this because I do not want my collection to grow any more than it does. I have too many books, and that's not, I don't know, it's not a bad thing in some ways, but I have over 1,000 books, and I have to say, I would guess at least 600 of them are not read. Another part of this is unhauled books. I am not sure if I'm going to count unhauled books towards this because I feel like in some ways that might be cheating. I have unhauled many books from my shelves. Every time I've done a big unhaul, I unhaul 60 plus kind of thing. But I'm not sure if I'm going to count that towards my book buying ban. So if I unhaul 60, I get to buy 30. I don't know. I don't think that's going to really help me. I think it needs to motivate me to pick up the books that I physically own and read them. Now, I can still read them via ebook from the library or audiobook from the library. That's really great too, but I do want to limit how many I am collecting. And 2 things that are not included in this are electronic books. So audiobooks are not included in this and ebooks are not included in this. However, I do have a goal for my ebooks, which will be coming up in my goals video, but I am only counting the books I physically own that are taking up physical space on my shelves. If I choose to reread a book, awesome. I want to reread more. I always want to reread more, and I never do it enough for my liking, but that does not count. I have noticed, because of how high my number is, that I read about 25 to 35 books a month. And some months I've gone up to 45. So if I read 15 books that I have owned prior to me entering into a next month, then I can pick up 7 books. But if I read 15 books, then that one extra book can roll over. So it's a going amount. So I can read, if I have a total of like 40 books that I've read, then I can buy 20 books in a book binge. But as long as I haven't bought books previously out of that ongoing stack. I hope that makes sense. The other stipulation that I will have with this is that these books are books that I have not read, the books that are counting towards this. So if I go to the bookstore and I see a book I borrowed from the library and I loved it and I want to own it, I'm going to buy it. If I have the finances, that's a different part of my life. But if I have already read the book and I know I want to own it, I'm going to allow myself the purchase of that. These books that are in this limitation are books I have never read yet. And some of them books typically are classics. I typically buy a lot of classics, which are easily accessible for me online or in electronic form or free at the library. So I do not have an excuse for not reading those books first if I really want to read that book and really, really want to own that book. So I hope you can see what I mean. Another stipulation that I'm going to put in here, just realized, is my birthday. I'm going to allow myself to buy books for my birthday because I get 25-30% off with Indigo, and I'm going to take advantage of that. So yeah, that's going to happen on my birthday month, some point in June, but I will be letting that be one of the only occasions that that can slide. Another thing is that I don't typically get books as gifts, but if I do, that's not going to count against this either because that's a gift, not me bringing it into my home intentionally. I'm still working out a few of the kinks about it, but I think that that covers all of my big questions about this. Let me know what you think of this book buying restriction that I'm putting on myself. I really hope that this will help me, first of all, prioritize my owned books and pare them down, but also then think very carefully about the books I'm bringing into my home so I know that I really want to own that book if I have not read it yet. And it's something I'm desperately interested in, especially if I'm paying full price for it, which sometimes is the case. So I really want to be intentional about my reading from my physical TBR and what I am bringing in to replace those books because that is something I struggle with. Aside from that, I will probably never get rid of an Agatha Christie, but other books I will probably be getting rid of if they are not ranking high on my rating scale or books I want to reread in the future. I'm really good about unhauling those books. So I'm going to be doing that. But remember, the unhaul isn't the part that's important. It's me reading the physical book and getting it off of my to be read essential list. So yeah, that is my hopeful plan. 2 pre-owned books every time. I guess I should also mention ARCs. If I have some ARCs, which I have owned, I've purchased some of them before reading the book, then that will still be a pre-owned book to me reading it, even if it's an ARC that I received as an e-copy. So I'm gonna still allow myself, because even if I read it physically, like my example book, I was trying to find it, this one, or the sequel to this one, I owned as a book before I read my e-ARC, and therefore it's a pre-owned book to me reading it. So that still counts as one book for my 2-to-1 ratio. So please let me know down below if you have any questions about this, and if you are going to do something similar. I know that book buying bans are always popular and I just can't do it. I find that I don't buy a lot of books, but I don't want to be told no. So I kind of cave if I'm told no. So just a personality quirk of mine. I really work hard on that personality quirk, but it's definitely something I'm not going to fight when it comes to book buying. So I'm hoping this limitation, these actions to abide by books, work out quite well. So thank you so much for listening to me talk about this. Like I said, let me know down below if you're going to do something like this, or if you are on some kind of book buying ban, or what you're working with for the year for your book restrictions if you're doing it. And if not, I applaud you. I just don't have any more physical space. Thank you so much for watching. Bye for now.